Naked and Afraid, Last One Standing, Season 1, Episodes 4 and 5 review. Yes, good people, I'm a man of my word, and when I said I would catch up with reviewing the show by today, I am to keep my end of the bargain. For this review, I will simply share my thoughts on the cast members for Episodes 4 and 5, and give my predictions for the show going forward. So without any further delay, let's jump right in. First things first, I gotta address Wes tapping out of the challenge. I was certainly not surprised by this. I've even been on record by saying that Wes needed to form some alliances in order to stay in the challenge. And to Wes's credit, he did a great job with pairing with Matt and Dan. I'm not sure if there's some hidden rules for the survivalists that they're not allowed to form bigger groups on the competition or work together and live together during the first 21 days, or if Matt and Dan simply didn't want to give Wes too much assistance. But deep down, I do believe that the other survivalists could have helped Wes make it to the first 21 days. What I found interesting is that when Wes tapped out, he handed over all his survival items to Dan, and it appears as if Dan's efforts to make alliances have paid off in this instance. Speaking of Dan, let's move on to Dan and Cheney. After the start of the season, I truly believe that these two had only hopes and prayers in making it to the first 21 days together, and this was primarily because of Cheney's being unable to deal with the cold weather. But along the way, Dan has proven to be the wind beneath Cheney's wings. He took the lead when it came to hunting, he was able to locate the beehive, and he convinced Gary to do all the hard work in collecting the honey while the Super Alliance reaped all the benefits. He convinced Carrie to fork over his fair share of the honeycomb to him and Cheney, all while pretending to be friends with everybody. I have to hand it to Dan for being the ultimate survivalist that nobody except Waz saw coming. And by the time Waz realized what Dan was doing, it was already too late. One could argue that if Dan didn't find that beehive, Cheney may have tapped out of the challenge and took Dan with her. So Dan definitely has 9 lives. Next there's Matt. It's funny to see Matt still leading the charge in Operation Let's Get Rid of Jeff. In doing so, Matt continues to allow the weaker survivalists to go further in the competition, which of course puts Matt in a better position to win, but it may also put the weaker survivalists in a position to win if they decide to betray Matt. But Matt proved his worth in this challenge by catching all those frogs and letting the other survivalists see that he caught the frogs. Before the Super Alliance knew that Matt had caught the frogs, they were trying to hide the honey from him. But after seeing the frogs, they were more than happy to quote-unquote share the honey with him in exchange for some of the frogs. And this is what gets me about the whole concept of sharing in the challenge. In the minds of the Super Alliance, they give their resources to a team in need, and that team shares their resources in return, should they get them. In my opinion, how is any of that really different from the trade deals that Jeff was proposing? It's not like Jeff was proposing unfair one-sided trade deals. But speaking of Jeff, let's go on to Jeff and Stacy. This whole situation of Stacy having to get medically tapped was very suspicious to me. Literally a day after Stacy threatened to voluntarily tap and take Jeff with her, if he didn't bend to her will, she falls ill and is too sick to carry on in the competition. And literally less than a day after Stacy leaves the competition, Jeff appears to be happy about the situation. No, I'm definitely not saying that Jeff intentionally poisoned Stacy to get her out of the competition. I just think that it's interesting how the whole situation unfolded, and the way that it was shown during the episode may lead people to assume that foul play was involved. But in episodes 4 and 5, Jeff continues to prove that he has a lot of heart, and he has the will to survive in the wilderness. But Jeff is not the best when it comes to finding survival items. He's not the best when it comes to completing the challenges. He has no real allies, and most of the survivalists are making a point to work against him, especially in situations where they have valuable items that they can trade with Jeff. For example, the situation with the honey. There was more than enough honey to share with everybody, and if the Super Alliance was smart, they could have traded the honey for some of Jeff's pelts and survival knives. They decided not to, and then they complained that Jeff doesn't share with them. I think that Jeff will remember how the rest of the team worked against him during the second leg of this challenge, and he will make it his mission to pay them back with interest. Next, there's Steven and Sarah. For episodes 4 and 5, I think that Steven and Sarah were the weakest team, and without that honey boost, I don't think that these two would have made it to the first 21 days together. They were in desperate need of a pelt, but they refused to trade with Jeff. Now, episodes 4 and 5 really didn't feature a lot of footage with these two working together as a team, It more so featured Steven doing the bulk of the work while Sarah felt under the weather. Being that these two made it to the first 21 days, I'm sure that deep down Steven was glad that he and Sarah no longer have to work together. And lastly, there's Gary and Waz. If there's one thing that episodes 4 and 5 proved, it's that both Gary and Waz both bring a unique set of skills to the overall challenge. Waz continues to prove that he's great at finding the advanced survival items, and Gary is great at proving that he is resourceful when it comes to hunting and gathering. I think that Waz's weakness is that he may think that he is the smartest person in the competition, though I think Dan has that crown for right now. I think for Gary, he's trying to be cordial with everyone, including Jeff, which was noticed by the Super Alliance. Now towards the end of the episode, we see what's in store for the remaining 8 survivalists. The episode ended with survivalists being divided into 2 teams of 4. There's Waz, Dan, and Steven on one team, and Gary, Cheney, and Sarah on the other team. The episode ended with Matt and Jeff walking to their respective teams' camp. Now the show has all but hinted that Jeff would join Gary, Cheney, and Sarah, but I think that's a misdirection. I truly believe that Jeff is going to team Dan, Waz, and Steven, while Matt teams up with Gary, Sarah, and Cheney. Now with these 2 teams of 4, I can see the challenge going one of 2 ways. Either the 2 teams will have to work together to compete against each other in order to gather resources and complete complex challenges in which the team of Gary, Sarah, and Cheney would be at a severe disadvantage. Or there will be a knockout challenges within the 2 teams, where the team members have to compete against each other in order to determine who stays and goes. Either way, I look forward to seeing how it all plays out. Well, this marks the end of the review. I would like to know what you all think about it. Please leave all comments below in the comment section, and I'll be sure to reply to everybody. Until next time, stay tuned and stay safe. Peace.